victory at this point, because we're just getting our head around learning the playbook. So, Tim, does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. And Zach has some, I think Zach being on the call last time helped a little bit bring real world situations
Sure did.
to what we do. He actually created sort of a script for us. I haven't introduced it to the group sales reps yet. He is working on fine-tuning it for the call center. But I'm going to share that with them probably within the next week, and I'll actually bring it up. I mean, I could do it now, but it really gives some insight into how we can do it in our world.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, any of those tools will help. So, Michelle, you just probably have to pretend you're jumping on the Ferris wheel or the roller coaster and just come for the ride for a little bit. We've been talking a lot about jargon and buzzwords and different things, so we don't mean to make you not okay. Just hang on and we'll figure it out. So you guys do this for me. If you're in a position, Michael, you can't do this because you're driving, but if you got a piece of paper, grab a piece of paper and a pen if you can hear me. And I'll give you a few seconds while you're finding that. But get a piece of paper and a pen and draw yourself a submarine. And that submarine's going to have 7 compartments. So if you want to draw a submarine, whatever yours looks like, doesn't matter what it is. But I just want to remind you of what we're studying here and where we are in this process. So if you've got your submarine down in that first compartment, you can either put B/R or you can write the words bond and rapport. So if you can remember, things in that bonding and rapport category was the okay, not okay principle. We want to go more not okay on purpose if we notice their not okayness. It's us getting our head around the disc, the D, the I, the S, the C. Are we playing back what people are telling us so we're proving it to them that we're listening to them? So that's that bonding and rapport category. The next compartment was the UFC, that upfront contract. And that's where we never want to assume the purpose, the time, and agendas, and the outcomes. And that's where we share our biggest fear, concern, or what we're looking to avoid. So UFC is that second one. That's where we get permission to go there. Then we got our head around the pain compartment. That's the third compartment, is pain. We're okay with gain. Sometimes people buy because they're excited they want gain, but a lot of times people will take action if they want to move away from pain. So Zach kind of shared a little bit of that. You know, is it sometimes people come in and they say, well, we want to look at our event or our group having our event at your place, but really what's underneath all that is that they don't want to happen what happened at the last time at some event, where something went bad or it wasn't enough food or it wasn't big enough, or whatever the pains are. If we can learn to uncover those are the people that take action faster with us. So that takes us to that submarine, you guys, the bonding rapport, upfront contracts, and pain. Last time we talked about the question strategies or the questioning strategies that drive that pain compartment. And I just want to review that before we go in the next compartment. So if you can see my screen, Tim, are you impressed with that good-looking logo I got?
I take you up, but that is a beautiful logo you got there.
Thanks. All right, so is there anybody on the call that wants to take themselves off mute? And remember, guys, interactive. My biggest fear is people don't want to interact or your bullshit meter goes off. So if you have a gut feeling about this, but we talked about this dummy curve. And if you remember on this dummy curve, the dummy side of the curve where people don't know what they don't know. The amateur is the one that answers all the questions and can't wait to tell everybody all the answers. And I'm trying to get everyone to be the professional dummy to where they are dumbing up sometimes even though they know the answers. So this would be something that I want you to be able to explain at some point. If you could give a brief explanation of the dummy curve, it's just basically as simple as playing a little dumb to get the other person talking. even though you might know her. And the dummy are going to be things like, what do you mean? Tell me more about that. Can you explain that a little bit deeper, or help me understand that? Even though you don't need that stuff, it's for them to get them talking. So look at that last one I put on the screen. I'm really not sure I understand that. Can you help me with that? Even though you really do understand it. We got our head around that dummy curve. Can anybody tell me what it means to reverse?
That's my favorite thing in the world. It's to put the question back on the customer and not really give them an answer to what they're asking, because it takes 3 times to really find out what they think.
Yeah, you got it, Tim. You're talking about that rule of 3 plus is really debriefing somebody, asking somebody to reverse it 3 times. The problem with this, guys, if you remember, people hate it when you answer a question with a question. So that's why before we reverse, we want to soften. And when I mean softening, we're using softening statements to soften that reverse. So reversing means answer a question with a question, but we're going to use a softening statement to not make it so raw. Now, if somebody asks us the same question twice, guys, we got to answer it or we're going to fall out of rapport. But a softening statement might be, that's a good question, or I'm glad you asked that, Mrs. Johnson, or, I appreciate you bringing that up, or I was hoping you were going to ask that. And then you reverse it. Why are you asking? Or you're asking that for a reason. It sounds like that's important to you. Just not jumping to the answer so quickly. So we got our head around 2 plus 2 equals 4. If it's a question that's really simple, I'm not saying not to answer it. Answer it. But I'm also challenging you to get your head around a little bit of softening and reversing people's questions. What you're going to find, guys, if you see recordings of yourself or if you watch the video, what you're going to find is that people tend to answer the questions. I did all day long because my mom and dad told me I'd better answer the question. Somebody asks you a question, you better answer it. So now you're this adult in the sales game, and somebody asks you a question, that little voice inside says, I better answer it. And I'm telling you, I would challenge you to use some questioning strategies so you can find out the reasons why they're asking those questions. Because remember with pain, the problem they bring you is never the real problem. It's you got to uncover the smoke. They don't tell you what the real reason is. Sometimes salespeople answer questions that were never asked. People will make a statement. A typical one I would hear is, we're getting some bids or we're getting some estimates on some different choices. Well, for some reason, salespeople feel like they got to answer that, and they start telling them about all their place and how great they are and all the cool stuff. I'm telling you guys, that thing that they just told you ends with a period. You don't have to answer it. You can reverse it. You can say, okay, but you're telling me that for a reason. And we've got to find out why they feel like they got to tell us they're getting other bids. So right now, your brain could be saying, well, that makes sense to me why they would say it, but I want you to get your brain to be thinking the other way. Why are they saying it? So, some of the things in budget, you guys. So if I go back for a second and you look at your page on that submarine, you should be bonding and rapport in category 1, upfront contracts is in category 2, and paying is that 3rd category. If you go to the right of that, the next box is budget. So if you'd write the word budget in there, you could write $sign if you wanted to quick note, but I'd rather write the word B, the letter B for budget, because it's not always about dollar. It could be other things. So I don't want you to take that literally. But before you go into the budget step, you guys, we've probably got to talk about childhood messages about money. So what I mean by that childhood message is that we all have grown up with a different message about money. So some of us on the phone may have grown up where money was plentiful. You may have went out to eat a lot. You always had what you needed to have. You may have had the latest tennis shoes or whatever. And some of us on this call grew up where we didn't get to do those things, or our parents were a little more frugal, or they just didn't have them. So why I'm challenging that is sometimes you can go into a conversation and you talk about money, you're bringing your childhood message about money. You either were told, don't talk about money, don't talk to strangers about money. You may have been told, well, there's some old English sayings. There's plenty where that came from, or save your money for a rainy day. It's not polite to talk about money with strangers. So there's a bunch of childhood English slangs there that we've grown up with. What I'm challenging you is, if you have some of those, they're going to affect you when you're looking at the system, because you're working that submarine, you're using it up for a contract to get permission to go there, you're finding some good pain, you're taking it 3 levels deeper as Tim was challenging us, and now it's time to talk about budget. Most of the time, what I'm just saying is that you might be doing fine, but if we're not having a good conversation about money, sometimes the prospect doesn't want to talk about it, or sometimes we don't want to talk about it because of our childhood message about money. So when we move into this budget step, here's the things we've got to realize is that person going to be able to pay for it? Does it match the time that everyone wants to talk about? And is it going to include the resources? So that's what I mean when I say budget. It isn't always about money. It could be about logistics. It could be about other things. So let me take a time out. What are the things other than money that could screw up or could alter them using IPC? Somebody give me an example of that.
They don't have the time to spend here to eat and play. They only have time to eat.
Okay, got it. So if you're taking them into the pain step and then you uncover that they have a window of time, that could affect that budget process. It isn't always about the money. It's just they don't have the time to play and eat, just time to eat. Is there any others, guys, other than money? I'm using big words like time and resources, but Michael's saying time. Is there any other things that's more customized to the IPC world? And Tim, I might need your help on that one.
Maybe availability on the day or looking to book.
Okay. Yeah, nice, because you might be booked on their date. Okay, good. So you're 1,000 feet here, you're along with upfront contracts and paying, and then you hear what you need to hear. You now can face, well, it's and talk about, you want to talk about budget? You want to talk about the day of the event, the calendar, or do you want to talk about the time block? Which one do you want to talk about? Sometimes they might not want to talk about money because they don't care. It's more important to hit the date, the time, or the block on the calendar. So just don't get hung up on that money stuff. So that's why it's saying the roadblock to completing a thorough budget step fall in 2 categories. It's technically how to say it, how to deal with that money step, but it's also conceptual. It means your childhood message about money. And there's some of those that I was referring to. See if you can finish any of those. There's always more where that came from. You can't take it with you. Money doesn't grow on trees. I'm not made of money. Save your money for a rainy day. Not polite to talk about money in public. You shouldn't talk to strangers about money. So you only you know if you're sitting there and if you've had those impressed upon you somewhere in your childhood. So guys, here's the 3 steps in the budget step. And I really please don't take this literal right now because we haven't customized this to the IPC system. We're just 10,000 feet getting the concept of moving from pain to budget. The first step in budget is you always want to make sure you're reviewing that pain. Now, if you're talking to them on the phone, it's in the same 60 seconds. You may not review it. If it's one of the outside people and they're having a conversation with a big planned event and they're actually talking the second time, that might review this. But 10,000 feet we're playing back pain. We're finding out if they even have a budget available that matches what we've got to do. And we want to find out how much it is. And they're going to answer those in your way, however you ask those. They're going to answer those in 12 different ways. So we got to figure out how do we respond to those. Sometimes people call, they want information, but they don't have a budget. Sometimes people call and they have a budget, but they didn't. It's not even come close to what we've got to do. Sometimes it's on the money. The bottom line to this, you guys, is can we even talk about it? Because most of the time people want, if it's on the phone, they just want to know how much it costs. Or if it's in some of your higher level conversations with bigger events, they're wanting to get all the data and information from you without showing, answering any questions. So we've got to, that's why that upfront contract is so key before we do this stuff. So let me take a time out. Jess, do you have any thoughts you're processing as you're thinking this through in your game, just from budget?
No thoughts at the moment.
Okay, tell me about what you do now. How soon do you talk about money in your conversation?
For me, honestly, it depends on the customer and how that initial phone call goes, and just kind of learning if they're one of those D people that just wants the facts immediately. That I get.
Okay.
I ask them, when they ask me how much it costs, I ask them what their budget is. So, I don't just blurt it out like that, but more or less, I never give, especially since it's something big, like a big group or buy-in, I never give the price initially without finding out what their max spend might be.
Good. So you can kind of see there, if they go there first, can you see where the most obvious place for us to set an upfront contract, you guys, is in that second compartment up front? But don't take that literal. We're always upfront contracting all through those compartments. So if you're a note taker, put a UFC right on top of that budget compartment. And what, Jess, you're saying there is, if someone goes to money, you can always say, well, let's take a step back and let's talk about budget.
Right.
I understand how you got there and that so quickly. So, how about you, Miss Tasha? Anything different?
No, not really. Sometimes when you talk to people, they talk about budget before you can even bring it up. So
yeah, they'll go there first.
Yeah.
Yeah. My hunch is that would be your business. Is people are going to want to go to the cost pretty quick. I'm not saying that's wrong. And go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
What we've sort of determined, is that about 60% of the people that call in, and most of our stores are in the call center right now, about 60%, 70% of the people that call in are really small groups. They know exactly what they want. We just got to get out of the way. So we're not going to slow those people down at all. When they want pricing, we're just going to give it to them. But then, we're going to throw a couple, like Zach sort of got a game plan. We're going to throw a couple little questions in there, see how they respond. Like, for instance, when was the last time you guys did this? Can you tell me about that event? And then if they get frustrated and they say, I just want the price, we're just going to give it to them. We're not going to fight them. We're going to stay out of their way, like Brett says. But then it's the other 30, 40% who are negotiating. These are more of the bigger fish. Like Tasha, you probably won't deal with them a whole lot, but this information is still good to know. Jessica in Tulsa will handle the bigger accounts. Those accounts where we sit down and we physically meet with them, that is exactly where you're going to use this system.
Got it. Good. How about Michael? Any thoughts as you're looking at this budget conversation, money concept? Not necessarily IPC's world, but just for you personally? Are you on that, Michael?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm kind of like Jess, what she said. It kind of depends upon the market segment and who's calling. And as Tim just mentioned, if it's the decision maker or not, and there's just lots of factors that go into, talking about the budget.
What about what Tim says? How does that impact you on the 30% versus the 60%, 70% get out of the way? What do you think about that?
I agree. We get those calls as well. They may not call the call center. They may call directly. So if they do, again, we're just, giving them what they need versus, going through a lot of scenarios and forth when they really just want to know how much is it going to cost for my 20 people. So.
Right. Michael, do you get into that other 30% where Tim was saying we really need to go deep? Or is that part of your role too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. How are you perceiving this budget conversation? Do you wait till you give them a quote, or do you talk about money before?
Well, you really have to ask questions about their event first and where they've been in the past, and usually it's going to come up before you even have to ask the question. What I have found, so to speak. So that's just the way it's worked for me for the most part.
Right. So when that happens, are you going to budget first then with them, or do you see where you could? Does that make sense, or do you see where you can interrupt that pattern a little bit? Because they don't know any better,
Oh, I agree.
It's very common. But have you had any victories or failures of interrupting that process?
Not that I can think of recently.
Okay. So again, goes back to your first statement. You're just processing some of this stuff, huh?
Yes, sir.
So, Michael, when you start seeing this budget conversation and you have it in that submarine after paying, is your BS meter going off? Are you looking at that going, that's not real in my world?
No.
Can't see you, man, so I can't tell whether your BS meter's going off. What do you There you are. So what are you processing when you see that, though?
Sorry, we're having to get real close here in the office.
That's all right. But this is a real line in the system. This is a real place, you guys, to where most people are dealing with are talking about the stuff, and then they tell them the price. And it's a big pattern interrupt. It's a big opposite world when we understand what's going on and we talk about budget before they know how much it is. And I know we haven't customized this yet in your world, but that's where I'm just taking the time out. Is that bugging anybody? Is that
it bugs me. It bugs me. It very much bugs me. The fact that you want me to slow down. So basically, I have a customer in front of me. He tells me he wants to have 1,000 people in the store. We figure out the date. I find out that the reason he wants to have these people is to show his employees appreciation. I'm ready to go. I have a good idea of basically what he's looking for. And now I'm ready to talk about packages. And normally I would pull out my handy dandy little flyer and show him my flyer, and we'd go over packages. And you're wanting me to instead say, well, hold on, before we go there, do you really are you the decision maker? Like, is it even worth my time to talk to you? So yeah, that does bug me a little bit, but I know why you're doing it, so keep going.
I understand. Of course, if we did it like you, Tim, then they might hang up.
Yes. I'm not real good at the strokes.
No, that's okay. So I think you guys, so when you look at this, you're going to want to take it very literal. And my challenge to you is take this stuff conceptually right now and don't take it so literal. We'll figure out how it fits in your world. So let me go to this next piece here. And what we do is at the bottom of pain, and as you're looking at your submarine, usually what happens at the end of that pain step going into the money step is we have this acronym called SVIC. And it's just a transitional thing. And I'm not expecting you to remember this, but at some point, especially those people on the 30% Tim talking about where it's a bigger event, this is a real key thing here. Is S stands for summarize. Bob, let me play back what you're telling me. Validate is just them validating, yes, you got it right, you didn't miss anything. And then we have a conversation about importance or commitment. That's where some people take this stuff too literal. The commitment is not the commitment with IPC. It's the commitment to not fall into the pain they just tell us, to not deal with the stuff. The commitment to do something different. And it's not a fit in all your conversations. There's a lot of places, like Tim says, let's get out of the way. I'm not sure how the SVIC is going to fit into your game. We're going to have to customize that. We're going to have to figure out how that fits. But as you move into from paying to budget, sometimes it helps to figure out what's the true commitment deal there. But when it comes to budget, we're trying to figure out conceptually set aside, or they have a budget for this kind of a thing. So let's pretend there wasn't even any pain, and someone says how much it is. If you could say, if you guys set aside a budget for something like this, they could say, well, we don't know, we don't have any idea, we don't know if it's $200 or $2,000. Then write this down, you guys, write bracketing. Sometimes people just need to get some help around what the bracket is. So if you're not ready to give them a firm price, then use a bracket. A group of 1,000 people, Tim, is going to fall. It's not going to be less than X, but it's not going to be more than Y. Depends on how we set it up, timing, schedule, and options. If your packages are right on the money, you may not need brackets. You could go into that budget. I'm not saying you don't. This is just where we're probably going to have to customize this in a little bit for IPC. All we're trying to do is protect you guys. Someone calling saying, I got 1,000 people, how much is it? And we give them the price, and they hang up, and we never hear from them again. We don't even know what's going on. That's all we're trying to do. Would that be fair, Tim? We're trying to just expand on the conversation so they have a subconscious thought of IPC gets me. They really care whether this event's going to be the one for us. Isn't that what we're trying to accomplish?
100%. We want to partner with them. And I think when you follow this whole program through from start to finish, you'll see how this makes you much more than just a salesperson. It's actually, you're taking time to understand. You really, truly want to make sure that their event is successful. I mean, that's the key of this whole program is you're developing rapport throughout the entire process because most people just give them the rate. So here you're actually trying to understand them. It's going to strike them as odd, and that's why you got to be careful when you use it and when you don't. But it's genius. It really is.
Yeah. So your upfront contract is just getting their permission to understand their event, so it'll work, and you're not assuming it's going to work. The pain is just trying to find what's truly the motivation of picking IPC. You guys, the budget is not some car dealer thing to say, hey, you got 1,000 people, Tim. What are you willing to pay for 1,000 people to come over to IPC? It's not one of those conversations. It's truly to understand, have they set aside a budget to do 1,000 people at an event? And if they have, do you mind sharing what that is? Yeah, the budget $300. Well, if that's not enough, we need to talk about that.
Yeah, Zach says,
go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, Zach has something really good. I want to read this to you really fast. He says, and this is off the seat of his, this isn't like exactly what he says, but this is what he wrote. He said, to get you what you need, I do a lot of events, and my job is to make sure you guys have a great time. I could just give you a price right now, but I really need to understand what your focus is for the event, because my biggest fear is for you coming in, spending money with us, and not having a great time. So to get you what you need, I'm going to have to ask you a few questions to understand your group better. This might take us around 5 or 10 minutes, depending on what we find. Is that fair? Once we have permission to find out who they are and what the group is all about, oh, he wrote this for them, what they have done in the past, figure out what they've done in the past, figure out if they're looking for something new, if they came to IPC last time, what was the best part about it, and then he goes directly into it. For the budget, he says this. He says, thanks, I'm glad we could get some clarity on our questions here. So the good news is that we have no shortage of options. In fact, there are a ton. Rather than take up your time explaining the packages that aren't the right fit, do you have a ballpark price per person that you'd like to shoot for? Then I could tell you about the options in that neighborhood. I think that's pretty good.
Nice. I love it. So, Michelle, do you have any thoughts in talking through this, kind of hearing Zach's version, or kind of getting that said? Do you have any thoughts? I know we haven't met.
Yeah, I think that example that he gave was perfect. It doesn't, I mean, you're basically asking them to go forward with answering these questions. It's a simple yes or no, and if they say no, then you kind of know right then they want a price right then. You give it to them, or you can go forward with kind of qualifying them.
Yeah, we're not trying to interrupt anybody's world. We're not trying to jack with them. Just trying to seek to understand what's going to win. And maybe IPC is not the fit. Maybe we need to refer them to somebody else. Sometimes we have more credibility with that's going to generate 10 other jobs that people trust us. Sometimes you just got to realize prospects, customers, when they call in, they don't know what they don't know, so they only know how to say, well, how much is it? And can we really interrupt that pattern? So, yeah, I love applying that, Tim. That's great.
Awesome.
It's awesome. It's right on the money. I love his upfront contract. So, guys, Sandler, come back with me high level, just conceptual here. Sandler, the thing that we call the monkey's paw. Why do they call it monkey's paw? Is it's a nautical term for when a large ship comes into a port. Instead of throwing down the big rope and hurting the dock workers throw up a small little rope and tie it to a little ball and fist, and then it allows them to pulley down to the big rope. So we steal that concept. What it's basically saying is the small piece before the big piece. So sometimes, let's say their budget doesn't allow them to have the big full package, full gammy. Is there something smaller? Now that we understand their pain, understand their gain, understand their reasons for choosing IPC, is there a smaller piece that we take a step with that allows them to do that? And we call that the monkey's paw. So here, this last one I have, you guys, is called, it's a Sandler rule. We all have these, we've been seeing these Sandler rules pop up throughout this process. The one for the budget step is you can't lose anything you don't have. Where that's coming from is sometimes people say, I don't want to talk about the money before I give them the quote because I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. And the rule is you can't lose anything you don't have, so don't be afraid to talk about the money. It is what it is. Nobody is calling and not expecting it to be a certain month. They know it's going to cost money. Sometimes people just don't know what that is. Is it $10 a person? Is it $2,000? What is that? What is it? We're just trying to get an idea of that. So if we do some of the things Zach said right there, some people are going to go, yeah, that'd be great. Let's talk this through and see if it even works. That just goes to show you it's not about the money. It's about the event. Some people are very price conscious, and it's all about the money. It's their budget. That's all they got. They're hoping they can do something with it. Well, that's maybe where the monkey's paw comes in. So, Skylar, I see you on here. How you doing, girl?
I'm doing good.
I know we got a little echo when you take yours off of mute, but I was just wondering if you had any thoughts. I know you've seen this a couple times, and not just about budget. I guess my question would be on any of this stuff, bonding report, upfront contracts, paying, questioning strategies, budget. Do you feel like you have any victories, or do you feel differently? You feel like you're executing some things? Any thoughts?
Definitely with the bonding and report, I'm still trying to master that, and my upfront contract isn't as strong as I'd like it to be, but
okay.
Listening to the standards has really helped with that.
Yeah, nice. Love it. If I can get people to just, I love it. It's great feedback. As we're getting our head around upfront contracts, they're not going to be like you want them, but they'll grow. They'll grow as you get stronger, and they'll grow as you start to be able to rack. There's nothing you haven't seen. So, good one. Jess, how about you? Anything from bonding report, upfront contracts, pays, budget? Anything you feel like you got your head around any of those a little differently today than in the past?
I don't know if it's any differently. Still just kind of taking it in and trying to apply it as much as I can. Realizing that I actually use it more than I realized I did before we got to, training like upfront contracts and stuff. Just wording it a little bit differently, but something that I already did.
Okay. Michael, anything else you're processing?
No, sir. I do have this on the wall. Let me show you something.
Okay.
Tim will like this.
Hey, cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
What is that?
Upfront contracts.
Oh.
That was a long time ago. Wow.
Very cool. Michael, who's the young lady sitting next to you?
That's Talisha.
Talisha. Hi, Talisha. Talisha,
Hi, how are
any
you?
thoughts? I'm good. Any thoughts that's going through your brain listening to some of this?
No.
Take it all in.
Yes. This is absorbing.
Alrighty, cool. Casey, how about you? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I really love the dummy curve and kind of playing dumb, and I think that carries on a lot into budget. And kind of like, just like when they ask for pricing, that's something I typically do is I just kind of play stupid. Well, we have a lot of options, but I really kind of need to know what you're looking for. And so I think that's something that I really like.
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Even though you know the price, you know that, to say the truth is, I could give you a price, but what am I pricing? I don't even understand your event. So I love it. That's perfect, Casey. Good work. How about Daniel? Anything, Daniel, you're processing? Daniel, are you on mute? If you are, we can't hear you. No, but so's Daniel is offline. We must have lost. How about, Daniel's coming back. How about Sabrina? Can you hear me, Sabrina?
I'm here, Brent. I can hear you loud and clear.
Hey, cool. Sabrina, how about from your perspective, any strokes you want to give the team? Are you hearing any victories for you? I mean, are you processing any of this stuff yet? Or are you just processing?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I am actually using the SVIC. I did not realize I was using it today. I'm very proud of myself.
Nice.
And it's definitely working really good. As my supervisor calls, I'm not on the phones enough to deal with roofs or birthday parties because we have a supervisor now, so she takes most of the phone calls.
Okay.
Robin's doing an excellent front contracts and trying to get it to the budget. We have a lot of phone calls that we send over to Zach, and he's hearing from her and Ashley. They're doing an amazing job using this new Sandler stuff. Ashley's doing really well as far as trying to get an upfront contract. She's not doing well in billing report, but she's working on it. And I think once she owns that, she's going to be an amazing person when it's being able to sell to a group.
Yeah, very good. Thanks for sharing. Awesome. Daniel, did you come back on?
Yeah, for some reason I got booted out. Sorry about that.
Okay, no, it's probably us. What, are you processing anything, whether it's this budget step or anything before that? On the free failures?
Yeah, in regards to the budget step, I know myself, I usually just jump right into budget. And that's simply because the majority of the customers that I talk to are in the education segment, and they're very budget conscious. So it goes again with what Michael and Jeff said about, it depends on the market segment. So I'm talking to somebody that's in corporate, budget doesn't have to come first.
Yeah, cool. Daniel, just for my in that education side, are they looking at 2 or 3 or 4 other events?
Like events with us or with other venues?
Do they come in, do you know they're looking at other venues, but they go to budget so quick? But are they looking at competitors?
Usually they are looking at competitors. For instance, they usually look at Main Event and us as their dinner spot, but they also have to take into consideration the places they go before. So I think that's why the budget's the biggest thing for them.
Hearing you do it pretty quick, or you even go there first, huh?
Sometimes I'll go there first, especially if it's somebody that I'm familiar with, particular school where each teacher go there right away.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good. All right, so I know this is kind of a shorter one, but I think what I'd like you to remember on this, you guys, to me the most important thing in this is, are you comfortable talking about money? Are you comfortable going there and just driving that? If you're comfortable with it, great. You might have to nurture it a little bit because that person may not be comfortable with it that you're talking to. They might have their own childhood message that's jacked with it. On the other hand, you might be uncomfortable talking about the money, and they are really comfortable with it, and they're pushing you faster than you want to go. So just got to be mindful of that. Would be the thing I'd really want you to take away from this is, what is your childhood message about money saying, and does it have an impact when you're having your conversations in your sales calls? So, very cool. Tim, what else is there anything else we need to dive into?
No, I think the biggest thing we'd like to stress is, and I sent out an email yesterday about it, is these calls are great. We're only having them once every 2 weeks. They are designed to be held weekly and in person. So the challenge Brett and I spoke about at the very beginning was, how is this going to work? Be doing webcam and only doing it twice a month. I think it's going okay. I mean, the feedback I've heard is pretty good from the team. The big thing I do want to put out there and just honestly challenge each one of you is you got to put some outside time into this. I mean, you have to. Even if if you want to do it this way, schedule yourself an hour every Tuesday at 1:00 when we don't meet. Because we're meeting every other Tuesday at 1:00. So maybe those opposite Tuesdays, we set up. You could set up a time with yourself to go over those audio files. I mean, it's so crucial to this. You have to master the reversing. The audio files I sent you guys directly yesterday was that reversing files. You have to master that. If you have not listened to that reversing chapter, it's called Reversing Examples. That is the best one, in my opinion, to listen to understand why this system works. Because when you hear it, it just oh my God, I could easily start doing this. It's not easy to do. I've been trying to reverse my wife for the last week and a half, and it's not going so well. But you have to practice it. You have to practice it. So that's pretty much what I got. And why are you laughing at me, Brett?
Michael was just laughing at you reversing your wife.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had to practice that way, too. That's the only person I could practice on was my wife.
Right. I'm doing upfront.
I'm glad you brought that up. There's two things here, you guys. Tim is so right. The person who listens to some of the audio, whether you love it or hate it, it starts to get in the aha moments for you to really click it. But then it's not unusual not to do this in your clients and customers yet. You want to practice on people with low risk. And, your spouses and significant others might hate you for it, but practice on waiters and waitresses out there in the world. Practice on your Walmart people and your Target people. When they ask you a question or they say something, Dummiker, what do you mean? I understand. And see how quickly they jump to helping you. That'll give you the confidence to take it in your real game in your real customers. All we're trying to do is get customers to tell us more. So, great point, Tim.
Your kids are also, the kids are wonderful to do upfront contracts to. I've been doing it to my daughters, seriously, for the last 3 months, and it's just amazing what I can get out of them. And then when they don't want to do it, I can go back and reference, hey, you agreed to this. We signed a freaking contract. I mean, seriously, though, like you got to practice it somewhere. And kids are naive, but they're, especially teenagers, like Michael knows exactly what I'm talking about. They think they're geniuses, so you can upfront contract them and debate them nonstop all day, and you'll be talking forever.
Yeah, great point, Tim. They don't see these reverses coming either. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so it's a great point, guys. Find ways to practice, whether you're listening to audio, practicing your world where there's no risk. But I want to get it to where you can cross the line and have some victories and failures of doing this with your customers so you can get them to buy in subconsciously rather than you have to tell them everything. Because we know in your business you can get exhausted telling and justifying and trying to sell. Our goal is, can you do some things to get them to self-discover I want IPC for that event? So appreciate you taking the time and being open-minded to it. I know we're in this knowledge and awareness. Michael said it best. I'm just kind of processing it. But at some point we're going to get aware of this stuff, but I want to flip the gear and get some time with certain people on here to where we can really start practicing in our world and applying it. So nice job, though. Thanks for taking the time, you guys. Have a great week.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
See you guys.
See you guys.